94.9 FM
and online at www.wadr.org. Newslink is up next. WADR.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on WADR.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari chairs the last council meeting days before handing over to President-elect Tinubu. Political parties and presidential candidate in Sierra Leone ready to sign a peace pact ahead of the June 24 elections. In Ghana, judiciary workers threatened shutdown after government failed to implement recommendations on pay increases.
All staff of the administrative offices of the judicial service, and that will include the court registrars, court recorders, interpreters, cashiers, filing clerks, process clerks, the registrars themselves. All of them are supposed to stay off work until the strike is called off.
And controversial $100 million drug case verdict sparked outrage as Liberia's judiciary rejects government's claims of temptation.
The Ministry of Justice, through its prosecution team, miserably failed to prove its case, to convince the jury on the indictment that it levied against the accused.
Stay with us for details of these stories and more coming up shortly.
Here is Tofik Abdulnasir with Newslink.
Thank you for joining us. Remember, we are streaming live on Facebook at West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. Political parties and presidential flag bearers in Sierra Leone will today sign the electoral pledge at a ceremony ahead of the June 24 general elections. Convened by the Interreligious Council and the National Council of Paramount Chiefs, the electoral pledge is supported by international stakeholders and a coalition of civil society organizations. The Commonwealth Secretary-General, Honorable Patricia Scotland KC, is reportedly attending the ceremony at the Bintumani International Conference Center in Freetown, the nation's capital. Imoredet has more details.
Thursday's ceremony, supported by the Commonwealth, serves as a platform for presidential candidates and the political parties in Sierra Leone to publicly commit to upholding peace before, during and after the June 24 elections. If there are disputes or claims of electoral irregularities, these personalities are advised to approach the nation's judicial system to seek recourse. According to the organizers, the pledge will reinforce existing national efforts towards peaceful election processes, national cohesion, and a stable political environment within the country. In a statement ahead of the event, the Commonwealth Secretary-General, Honorable Patricia Scotland KC, stated that governing takes enormous courage and applauds all the candidates who have agreed to sign this election pledge and to protect the national interests. The initiative will be witnessed by key national and international stakeholders, including the diplomatic community in Freetown. Meanwhile, the regional body, ECOWAS, and the African Union AU, the United Nations, and the Commonwealth Secretariat have all been asked to support the political parties' commitment to peace. Establish support for electoral dialogue and conflict avoidance in member states. The initiative by the Commonwealth has encouraged similar efforts in the past, most recently in Nigeria, during the 2023 elections.
Imoredet filed that report. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari of Nigeria Wednesday participated in a valedictory session of the Federal Executive Council where he met with staff of the State House as part of a countdown to the end of his days as the head of state. Buhari thanked all the ministers for their steadfastness in pursuing the goals of his administration, urging support for the incoming president, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. WADR's Usman Umar in Abuja brings us more.
President Buhari appreciated the ministers for working closely together despite many odds and challenges and sustaining the synergy that translated into what he referred to as many achievements. The president directed the ministers to tidy up their work and avoid last-minute rush that could compromise their works over the years. President Buhari also met with members of staff of the State House, lauding both the senior and junior workers for supporting his administration for 8 years. He noted that Nigerians will in the coming years speak in his defense, for according to him, he gave the country all his best.
Please note that from Lake Chad to Benin is more than 1,600 kilometers. Only God can effectively guard that border. So you need a person who will have the energy and the competence to effectively supervise. And with our land and our potentialities, we thank God, Nigeria is favored.
Contrary to expectation, however, the president did not dissolve the cabinet, but instead urged the ministers to go back to their offices and continue their works till May 29. Lai Mohammed is Minister of Information, Culture and Tourism.
While we were at the chambers, there was a false breaking news that the Presidential Council has been dissolved. That is not correct. As a matter of fact, we've been directed by the President that we should all go back and return to our offices. So it is not true that the Presidential Council has been dissolved. It's still very much alive.
Ahead of the May 29, major roads leading to the Eagle Square, venue of the presidential inauguration, are being decorated and guests have begun arriving as major hotels in the city are already busy. There is also a visible increase of security deployment in strategic locations. For Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, Usman Umar, reporting from Abuja.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Here in Senegal, opposition leader Ousmane Sonko has responded to Wednesday's court proceedings into a case filed against him by a massage parlor employee, Adjin Sarr. The plaintiff accuses Sonko, who was at the court by proxy, of multiple rapes and issuing death threats. While he has repeatedly denied these accusations, the state prosecutor asked judges overseeing the matter to charge Sonko and serve him a 10-year jail term. The case was adjourned to June 1. The PASTEF leader, during an address late Wednesday via social media, faulted the hearing, citing inconsistencies and numerous contradictions in the testimonies. Take a listen.
For a rape case, neither the prosecution nor the public prosecutor's office has been able to provide any evidence. Because there is none, no evidence could be produced for a hearing that was held from 9 a.m. until 3 a.m. How can a court deal with a civil party that spreads lies and contradictions? Whereas before, the civil party claimed to have irrefutable evidence on her cell phone. Neither at the investigation, nor at the gendarmerie inquiry, nor at the hearing did she produce any videos. How can this civil party say that she is pregnant, even when after 2 years she still has no baby? And in front of the judge, she admitted to having said this in order for her to leave the house where the salon is located. What credibility can we give to a civil party that lies to everyone? A civil party who has accused everyone, including her lawyers. How can the Republic of Senegal, the Senegalese justice system, stoop to this level to say that they will organize this trial simply to get to me?
Senegalese opposition leader Ousmane Sonko speaking there. The Judicial Service Staff Association of Ghana, JUSAG, has declared an indefinite strike over the failure of the government to review their salaries. According to the association, per the Constitution, the salaries of staff of the Judicial Service are to be reviewed every 24 months by the President on the advice of the Judicial Council. However, the President and the Judicial Council have failed to do so over the past 3 years. As WADR's Atiwin Mbelolosin reports, Ghana's judicial system may grind to a halt due to this industrial action.
Litigants who will be expecting their cases called and attended to by the staff of the Judicial Service will this morning meet empty courtrooms as the Judicial Service Association of Ghana has yet again embarked on an indefinite strike. The association demands the implementation of a recommendation of the Judicial Council in February 2023, which will see an increase in salaries and allowances for their members. The members of the association have not received a raise in their salaries in almost 3 years. The secretary of JUSAG, Abdullah Yakubu, gives a breakdown of the staff who are embarking on the strike.
All staff of the administrative offices of the Judicial Service, and that will include the court registrars, court recorders, interpreters, cashiers, filing clerks, process clerks, the registrars themselves. All of them are supposed to stay off work until the strike is called off. For security men, they are supposed to be around to guard the security installations.
The last time the association went on a similar strike in 2021, many litigants were left stranded as their cases were not heard. This year, they fear the same or even worse.
On the part of the government, you should try as much as possible to meet their demands. If not full, maybe a convincing one. You see, at times, it's painful to learn that some of the grievances dates back so many years.
It has affected me a lot. In fact, it's very frustrating because I have to skip to come, then I have to reschedule again.
So what I can say to government is that I plead with government to listen to their plea. Whatever they have on table, they should sit down on round table to settle with judicial service.
It should be noted that Wednesday marked the end of the tenure of the Chief Justice in Yeboah, who served as the head of the judiciary for 3 years. Reporting for Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Atiwin Mbelolosin in Accra.
Still on legal matters in Liberia, the judiciary branch of government has rejected claims by the executive that adjudicators in the controversial $100 million United States drug case were reportedly tempted with. Last week, 4 suspects who were caught with a container load of drugs were set free after a 12-member jury found them not guilty. WADR's Darlington Popper in Monrovia reports that the development has sparked deep public debate and condemnation.
Justice Minister Frank Musadin in a statement criticized the verdict, describing it as clearly undermining the collective effort of Liberia and its international counterparts in the fight against illegal substances. However, the spokesman of the judiciary, Dara Ambrose Mann, disagreed with the criticisms, saying the government failed to prove the case against the 4 defendants.
The Ministry of Justice, through its prosecution team, miserably failed to prove its case, to convince the jury on the indictment that it levied against the accused. Who imported the container? The TRH company. Or the TRH company imported the container. The people named that. So the juror asked, so how do you charge them with importation drugs when the name is not the one who imported?
Lafayette Gu, a prosecuting lawyer, insists their evidence was compelling to convict the suspects, but said the jury decided otherwise.
We provided the evidence, we showed them the drug, we showed them video. We display the evidence for them. They said it was just not sufficient. That's the only thing I can say that I believe that the juror came away and said for me for now on the issue of the law.
A renowned criminal lawyer, Arthur Johnson, observed that from the start of the evidence collection process to the indictment, state prosecutors were never serious about sentencing the suspects.
Lafayette Gu is speaking from the frustration as a prosecutor. How will you prosecute $100 million case? The prosecutor is not even making $1,500 correct. It's not possible. Another thing that happened again is that during this regime, they retired most of the serious senior prosecutors that were in the courtroom who understand the courtroom. I expected the justice minister to appoint a serious prosecutor or a team of prosecutors to supervise the DEA.
The 4 defendants have since fled the country to avoid being re-indicted after a threat by the government. For Newslink on the West Africa Democracy Radio, I am Darlington Popper in Monrovia.
It's 14 minutes past the hour 12. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM, Dakar. Here is a reminder of our top stories. Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari chairs the last council meeting days before handing over to President-elect Tinubu. Political parties and presidential candidate in Sierra Leone ready to sign a peace pact ahead of the June 24 elections. In Ghana, judiciary workers threatened shutdown after the government failed to implement recommendations on pay increases. And controversial $100 million drug case verdict sparks outrage as Liberia's judiciary rejects government's claims of temptation. Still ahead is the guest interview, press review, and sports news.
West Africa Democracy Radio.
Niamey, the Nigerian capital, is hosting the second annual International Forum on the Development of the Lake Chad region. Dubbed Integration and Management of Natural Resources, Solutions for a Sustainable Peace and Economic Development, is aimed at assessing the situation of the region. Experts and other development actors are taking part in the three-day forum that began on Tuesday. Oge Obi Erika has more in this report by our Niamey correspondent Murtala Zubairu.
The second annual International Forum on the Development of the Lake Chad region brought together various participants to discuss the challenges to be met and the progress to be envisaged. After the one in Nigeria, organized in April 2022, this forum focuses on the theme of regional integration and management of risks related to natural resources, solutions, and peace for economic and sustainable development. Prime Minister Uhumudu Mahamadou welcomed the holding of these meetings. He spoke of the urgent need to do everything possible to promote a definitive return to peace in Lake Chad. Several topics were discussed at this forum. Among others, the situation of displaced persons, the effects of climate change, the exploitation of natural resources, peace, security, and local governance. The results of the meeting were very enriching, and a Niamey declaration is expected at the end of the meeting.
Oge Obi Erika voiced that report by Niamey correspondent Murtala Zubairu. In Guinea, a meeting between the High Authority of Communication and the press associations took place Wednesday in Conakry in the aftermath of a day without the press. The press union and media owners were present at the decisive meeting. All the demands of the press were put on the table, and the president of the Guinean Media Regulatory Authority, Boubacar Yassini Diallo, promised to pass on the information to the right person. Here is a report by our Conakry correspondent, Cherno Alpha Ibrahim Balde, and voiced by Matisi.
Boubacar Yassine Diallo, president of the High Authority of Communication, was with his commissioners at the negotiation table alongside presidents of several press associations and the Secretary General of the Press Union. The exchanges lasted nearly 4 hours, during which journalists voiced their concerns before the Communication Authority. These include the dismantling of the equipment of the press group Afrique Vision, the repeated jamming of the airways of Radio FIM, and the restriction of social networks. In response, the president of the High Authority for Communication said he appreciated the strong representation of press associations. The former Minister of Information and Communication also welcomed the frankness in the discussions and made promises.
We have suggested to the High Authority of Communication itself that it conducts certain investigations to see what is actually happening once again on the ground, because we are threatened. Freedom of the press is threatened in our country because our instruments are threatened, and as we have said here today, the situation is very serious. Today's meeting does not negate any action.
Commitments have been made, but the press union does not intend to give in until the restrictions are lifted. The union maintains its schedule of actions planned for next month in the form of protest.
Matisi voiced that report by Conakry correspondent Cherno Alpha Ibrahim Balde.
This is the newspaper
Review. Stay on top of the news. Get the most important stories with added insight and concise review.
This is the newspaper review.
Atewin and Bella Lawson joins us now with the major headlines from the Ghanaian dailies.
Good morning. Welcome to the newspaper review for today, May 25, 2023, from Accra, Ghana. Let's start with the Daily Graphic newspaper. AU at 60, silence the guns. That's a screaming headline. And it goes on to say armed conflicts threaten Africa Continental Free Trade Area, Professor Entry Danso warns. Let's bring you some banner headlines. Mental cases increasing, data reveals. Chief Justice Enin Yeboah retires. Has company law sculpted Justice Gertrude Tokunu for Ghana? That's the question that's being asked. And the final banner headline, free SHS suppliers give NAFCO 2-week ultimatum. From the Daily Graphic newspaper, let's go to the Daily Guide newspaper. The screaming headline, MPP guru storm Asin North for another by-election. Then some banner headlines, will be disciplined with IMF deal, according to President Nana Akufo-Addo. No weed licensing, Supreme Court insists. And Boga MP back in court for criminal trial. Those are some interesting stories in the Daily Guide newspaper. Let's bring you some business stories before we do some showbiz. The Business Analyst newspaper. The screaming headline, economic recovery. Akufo-Addo promises to rationalize expenditure to limit waste in the management of the country's resources. Then some banner headlines. We are way above 5% fiscal deficit ceiling. That's according to President Akufo-Addo. IMF position on free SHS vindicates Mahama. That's according to Member of Parliament Dr. Clement Apak. JUSAC embarks on nationwide strike over salary and allowances. And the final banner headline, importers and exporters unhappy with the Ghana Revenue Authority for clamping down on businesses. Let's end the newspaper review by looking at the headlines in the graphic showbiz. Gamro should be closed down. That's according to Akosia Ejapon. She's a veteran high life musician. Then dare to slit the gum at AMVCAs. And then consistency does the magic for me. That's according to Pat Thomas. And Mona for real innocent until proven guilty. So those are the headlines in the major dailies in Ghana today. My name is Atewin Imbila Lawson. Back to you in the studio.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is The Guest.
In preparation for the upcoming general elections in Sierra Leone, political parties and presidential flag bearers are scheduled to sign the electoral pledge today during a formal ceremony. This event is being organized by the Interreligious Council and the National Council of Paramount Chiefs with the support of international stakeholders and a coalition of civil society organizations. Honorable Patricia Scotland Casey, the Secretary General of the Commonwealth, is said to be in attendance at the ceremony, which is taking place at the Bintumani International Conference Center in Freetown, the capital city of Sierra Leone. The crucial question remains, will the political actors demonstrate a genuine commitment to uphold the peace agreement they are about to sign? Joining us from Sierra Leone is Kemosham, the editor of Mano Reporters, to shed light on this matter.
Yeah, so it has just suddenly intensified within the last few hours. That is because the official campaign started on Tuesday, the 23rd, as was announced by the political parties have gotten into high gear since then. Although activities have been ongoing, campaign activities have been ongoing for some time now. So to answer your question, we are in full mood politically as the election approaches now.
Right. So the presidential aspirants and other political actors are meeting today to sign a peace pact. What do you make of that? Do you think this would change the narrative, especially when Sierra Leone is known by electoral violence, sometimes also some of these politicians sign all the peace agreements, yet there is violence during elections. Do you think this particular one can change the narrative?
It's a hope generally that it can change the narrative, that it can have an impact, on the reality on the ground. Like you said, this is not going to be the first time political parties in Sierra Leone will be signing peace pact, but we have always had reports suggesting that it has been violated. But in a way, it kind of helped because political party leaders are forced to act, even if not the way they would be expected to prevent any form of violence. But it has worked. At least it has helped to reduce the tension. It has helped to prevent widespread violence where it could have occurred. So the hope is that it will hold and it can help. And this is very important for this coming election, considering the fact that tension had mounted long before now. Even before the election, your listeners must have heard about recent violent happenings in the country. The most notable is the August 10th, and these are all more or less linked to the political situation in the country.
Right. Underscoring Madabio's administration, he is seeking re-election. Do you think he stands a better chance of coming back to power?
That question is a difficult one to say whether he stands a chance to come back to power. Now, we have two political parties, heavyweight political parties that have exchanged power since independence. Madabio's SLPP and the main opposition, which he placed in the 2018 election. That's the APC. And that election has been described like a narrow victory for Bio. A lot of factors were at play at the time, and many of those factors have changed. Geopolitical factors, many of them have changed. Some in favor of him, but others in favor of the opposition as well. And in terms of the economy, how he has handled it, fulfillment of his promises, it depends on whom you talk to. So as always, the country is sharply divided. It is difficult for you to tell who is likely to win. Sierra Leone is not that kind of country where you can easily predict the winner. Otherwise, Madabio's victory was a surprise to many people in 2018. It was not expected, and it happened. So anything can happen at the time. But I can tell you that there is a lot of grievances around here about how he has run the country in the last 5 years in terms of fulfilling his promises. And like I said, for his supporters, he has done well. But for another half of the country, he hasn't done enough. And in terms of the economy, even he himself has admitted in the past that it hasn't been as expected.
Kemo Sham is a news editor. Here is Sankule Janko with Sports News.
Hello, very warm welcome and thank you for joining us. Nigeria's national under-20 have secured a place in the round of 16 of the 2023 FIFA World Cup in Argentina after a 2-0 win against Italy on Wednesday evening. Second half goals scored by Salem Fago and Jude Sunday helped the Flying Eagles beat Italy 2-0 in the Group D clash at the Estadio Malvinas Argentinas. Samson Lowell put Nigeria ahead after 61 minutes into the match before Jude Sunday's stoppage time strike. Following their 2-1 win over the Dominican Republic on Sunday night, Nigeria secured qualification, sitting top of their group with 6 points after 2 matches. Meanwhile, reigning African champions Senegal were held to a 1-1 draw by Israel in the FIFA Under-20 World Cup on Wednesday evening. Babacar Ndiaye scored an own goal to give Israel the lead 14 minutes after the restart. Senegal leveled the scores courtesy of a Pab Diop 80th minute strike. The Teranga Cubs pushed for a winner but failed to register a win after match day 2 of the World Cup. And that's it for sports. It's back to you.
We have come to the end of this edition of Newslink from West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to our listeners in the Gambia via Hot 104.3 FM and in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM Lofa County, in Ghana on Royals FM 104.7 Wenchi. Christian Mukidi has been on the console, and Mustafa Sek has been streaming live online. Do interact with us via social media platforms or Twitter, Instagram at WADR News, on Facebook, West Africa Democracy Radio English Service. I am Tofik Abdulnasir. Good afternoon.
News, talk,
music.
Get it all 24 hours on West Africa Democracy Radio.